Vernomatic Productions.
Are you ready?
Live from the Metal Mayhem Studios in Rochester, New York.
We are gold.
And heard around the world by metalheads just like you. This is Metal Mayhem ROC.
Heavy metal music.
Your weekly dose of metal music, interviews, album reviews, news, and more. Want to be part of the show? Send us a message through our website, metalmayhemroc.com, or hit us up on Facebook and Twitter. Search Metal Mayhem ROC, a proud member of the Pantheon podcast team.
It's getting nice and heavy.
Now, welcome our hosts, John the Vernomatic Verno, and direct from New Jersey, Metal Walt.
Good evening, everybody. Hope everyone's doing well, staying healthy, enjoying the springtime. Well, tonight, Metal Walt's back with another solo interview. He's got Ernie C from Body Count. Walt, tell us about this interview, because you're real excited. What do you got for us?
Well, you know, Body Count's synonymous with musician and actor Ice-T. But you got to remember, he's had a sidekick for the last 30, 40 years, and that's Ernie C, his guitar player and songwriter. He's been there from the beginning. And John, his roots go back much, much further than Body Count. These guys went to high school together in South Central LA in the mid-'70s. You know, they have a history of playing in bands back then, which was the genesis of what would become later. And man, you know, you listen to the episode, Ernie's a funny guy. He's got a shit ton of stories, and just how he delivers the stories, he was cracking me up. You know, just thinking about, like, you know, growing up in this environment and how they got on the map with that whole controversial Cop Killer album. And here it is, there's 6, 7 albums in. But it goes further than that. He talks about collaborating with David Gilmour on the new album. Richie Sambora was there. I take him back in time 30 years ago to the Black Sabbath Forbidden album. He shares some great entertaining stories about his time with Tony Iommi and Cozy Powell. And again, this was just one of those ones that we love the music, but hearing it from somebody and you get these vantage points that you'll never get by just listening to an album. It just adds so much color to the music that we love.
You know, when I was editing this interview, the one part that I really dug was when he talked about 3 guitar English gods, Tony Iommi, David Gilmour, and Brian May. Ernie C worked with all 3 of them in their career. Who would have ever thought that? But before we dive into that, a quick reminder, we invite you to head up to metalmayhemroc.com, sign up for the newsletter. There you'll get notifications on everything we're doing here, podcasts, YouTube interviews, reminders for the radio show I do on Monday nights. Visit the merch page. There you'll find hoodies, hats, t-shirt seasons here, gang. Tons of shirts up there, phone cases. And listen, if you like what we're doing, subscribe to the pod wherever you're listening. Leave us a review. It helps new listeners find the show and keeps the metal going. All right, let's get into this. Ernie C, Body Count, Metal Walt. What a combo. I'm the Vernomatic, and this is Metal Mayhem ROC.
Who's the guitarist and Ice-T's right-hand man in American heavy metal band Body Count? A founding member who's been there from the beginning, and he's currently promoting their ferocious new album, Merciless. I'm with Ernie C. Ernie, how are you?
I'm good today. I'm good. Very good.
Nice to see you and have you there. I was at the Starland Ballroom record release show in December, and I was in that little kitchen area. If you remember where the stairs come down from the dressing room, there's a little kitchen area, and I caught Ice at one point. And I went over, just introduced myself, and I said, hey, we'd love to get you on to promote the album. And he says, we can make it happen. So here we are a couple months later.
We're making it happen. Yeah, but you know my friend Jim, right? Jim Salisbury?
I am friends with Jim Salisbury as well.
I know Jim Salisbury from day one. I met Jim Salisbury, him and I, and the singer from Alice in Chains. What's his name? The original.
Lane.
Yeah, Lane.
Okay.
Him and I and Lane were on a panel together in 1991 Foundations Forum.
Oh, yes, I remember the Foundation. So you know Jim that long. You know, it's funny. We met Jim, ironically, in the Friends and Family area, VIP area during Metallica's 72 Seasons New Jersey shows 2 summers ago, just making small talk. And next thing you know, we're talking to Jim, and now we're friends. I see him at all the Jersey shows. And
you will see Jim everywhere. I've known Jim, 30 plus years.
Well, that's great. I'll make sure I say hi to him, and it's good to hear that. So, hey, Ernie, I want to get into the new album down the line, of course, but I want to get a little bit into the origins of you, right? So, you go back to the 70s with Ice-T. He was a friend of yours. And, technically, Body Count wasn't really formed till about 1990, but your friendship goes back. So I just want to know, where did you guys meet and how did you guys become friends?
Well, I've played guitar since high school, and Ice back in high school was a break dancer. So he used to break dance with, they had a crew that would break dance. And so I was always the backup default musician for the backup dancers back in high school. So then, time goes by, he goes to the army. He was a ranger in the army out of high school. He went ran to, he's the badasses. The Rangers are badass. So he goes into the army. I'm still playing guitar. So then he comes back and says, have you heard this thing called rap? I'm like, yeah, I've heard on. He says, I'm interested in doing this rap. So when he first started playing, we started doing some early stuff. And then he called me up and said, I got some movie things happening. So we're in a movie called Electric Boogaloo. It's a 1984. We're in a movie called Rappin', and Rappin' had Mario Van Peebles in it. And, so we did the early rap stuff, and then his rap career started. He started doing rap records, and his rap stuff started taking off. I played on his rap records, and I played on this Girl Tried to Kill Me and some other stuff like that. And then it just reached a point where we couldn't put any more guitar stuff on a rap record, So then that's when Body Count, came into existence.
But how did you personally, so, you guys went to high school, Crenshaw High School in South Central LA. I don't know. I don't know if it's more of an urban environment there or mixed race, but was guitar in?
Well, I used to play. Ice did a thing where he was talking about Ernie used to play for all the Crips. All the Crips would be out front playing, and they'd be like, Cuz can play guitar. They didn't know what I was doing because I would play Peter Frampton songs. I play Do You Feel Like We Do? I had Talk Box. I was at everyone at the school was playing Funkadelics, Parliament. It was R&B. It's AM R&B 70s. It's Kool and the Gang. It's Earth, Wind and Fire. It's it's that stuff. And I'm playing Peter Frampton. I'm playing Aerosmith. I'm playing, but the thing that I got everyone with was I play Isley Brothers songs. Isley Brothers had the most guitar that you could put in R&B. Who's That Lady, Summer Breeze, the most guitar you could put in R&B. So I'd play that stuff. Then people could figure out I could play, not from anything else, but from those songs that they heard on the radio.
Pretty cool. Now, but again, were you into any of, let's say, the harder rock bands? Like you mentioned Aerosmith, Peter Frampton. Were you into Zeppelin, Sabbath, Bad Company, Judas Priest, stuff like that too?
Or a friend of mine in the hood says, Ernie, you play guitar. You need to start listening to this. So he gave me a bunch of tapes. He gave me a complete catalog of Led Zeppelin up to that time. He gave me Rush, UFO. So I started listening to those things. But still, I started playing the stuff, but I couldn't play that kind of hardcore. Most people could digest with Peter Frampton, in that at that high school. That's as far as we could go, So later on, that's what and I listened to a lot of Deep Purple. Growing up, Blackmore was my favorite guitarist. Everyone says, "Oh, you love Hendrix." I'm like, no, I really don't. Hendrix was not really my guy. Hendrix is basically my father liked Hendrix, basically. Not because Hendrix is just like Lightning Hopkins and B.B. King and John Lee Hooker turned up, amplified. He's playing basic blues.
Yeah, that's cool. So what kind of Rush? Were you into Hemispheres and 2112 and stuff like that?
Yeah, I don't even know the names of the records because I just had the CDs and all the names were kind of off the records. So I remember I had a double album set that was live. I just started listening to it just because I just liked the way the guitars. I wasn't into the people in the band. I was just into the music. I didn't know who was in Rush. I wasn't that kind of fan. I didn't know who was in the bands. I just played the music.
That's cool. So you probably had it on your turntable or your cassette deck and you just played along. That was probably All the World's a Stage. That's what I'm guessing because that was their first live album that came out in 75, 76. But that's pretty cool.
Was it a double album?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it then.
That's it.
Yeah.
Well, that's good stuff, Ernie. I always love to get to hear about the origins of, how an artist learned what music was played in their house and what made them pick up a guitar or whatever instrument. So taking us up to, let's say, the start of Body Count. So Body Count was launched really to the masses in that first Lollapalooza tour in 1991.
Right.
In looking back at it, it was kind of cool because it was really Ice-T's set list. He was doing half rap songs, and then you guys kind of came in and played 3 or 4 songs on the back end of the show. You toured the country. But I'm curious, from your point of view being there, how did the metal songs go down? How were they received to the audience?
On that audience, it was received very well. I always said, our band wasn't good enough to play for an hour and a half or do a whole set because we only knew the songs that we played. Because the band, before we did one on Lollapalooza, the band was only together for like 9 months. We did 11 shows in LA, small club, the small clubs here in LA. And then the next thing you know, you're playing in front of 40,000 people. And the songs that we played, those were the only songs we knew. So we what's that?
No, I was going to say, and some of the songs that you played, I was looking at the set lists. I mean, they were, Cop Killer, There Goes the Neighborhood, whatever else was played. But, maybe the other question is, if it was it a little shock value to the audience more because, hey, here's this rap icon playing metal? Or was it, holy crap, look at the outspoken and bold messages behind these songs that reflect the social issues of the time?
Well, we got on Lollapalooza because I knew Perry Farrell. I'll tell a quick story about this. I was a messenger, a messenger in LA. I delivered packages to companies, right? And so I was delivering a package one day up on Sunset Boulevard, and I'm I always call it, I'm ear hustling a conversation. So I'm listening. I see Perry Farrell, and I know who he is. So I hear him say to his manager, I'm trying to do this song. And I am trying to, the song was a song called, I'll have to say the word because that's the song. It's called Nigga Whitey. It's a song by Sly Stone. It was real popular. It's like a social song from the 60s. I happen to know Sly Stone. He was living at my friend's house. So right. I said out loud, I know Sly Stone. And so Perry's like, and who are you? I said, I'm Ernie. I'm delivering this package here. I know Sly Stone. So he says, oh, I need to talk to you. So they brought me in the office and this and that. They said, you can get Sly Stone? I said, yep, I can get Sly Stone. So fast forward. They're doing a movie called The Gift. It's Perry Farrell's wife is filming the movie. So they set up all the, they were at a rehearsal studio and they were going to film it. So they set it up. Yeah, that's a week later. And I talked to Sly. Sly's like, hey, man, I do this. No problem. I'll be there. So then the day of the shooting, I go down to meet Perry, and I meet there's a bunch of lawyers. Everybody's there, camera people. Everyone's there. And so I call up where Sly was. And they're like, Sly is in rehab. I'm like, oh, no. So I'm sitting there, and everybody's like, where's Sly? I'm like, Sly's can't make it today. I said, do you know this guy, Ice-T? They're like, Ice-T? We love Ice-T. And I said, I can get Ice-T here. And they was like, you can? I said, yeah, I can. I can get him here right now. So I called up Ice. Okay, Ice is in the studio that day with Quincy Jones, recording Back on the Block. He says, I said, you need to come here and do this song for me, man. I'm on the hot seat right now. So he says, as soon as I'm finished with Quincy over here, I'll be over there. So he rolled on through to the shooting, right? And so then he's like, they're getting ready to shoot the thing. It's a thing where, because we did the song on Lollapalooza. at some venues. A nigga White, we did that. We did the song. But Perry says, to me, he says, Ernie, you got a guitar? I'm like, I keep one in the car. He says, go get it. So I hopped in the video. And so that's how we got on Lollapalooza.
That's an awesome story, man. I didn't know that. It's almost like had Sly stayed sober, maybe body count never happens.
Yeah, it's very true. If sobriety worked for him, we wouldn't be here because he would have done the video. Perry would have never met Ice, under the circumstances, and it wouldn't have happened.
Well, I'm thinking to name drop you someday, Ernie. If I want to get it backstage somewhere, they're going to say, who do you know? I'm going to say, I know Ernie C. And they're going to say, fine, you can come on tour with us.
This guy called me the Kevin Bacon of metal.
Well, that's it. 6 degrees of whatever, right?
Yeah. He says, Ernie, you know everyone. And, I've been in close contact with everyone.
That's how it works, man. That's how it works in life. It's all about who you know and the connections you get. So,
Metal Mayhem ROC.
Ernie, the self-titled album that dropped in 1992, and this has been a common thing for all your 7 or 8 albums, social and political issues. On that album, you touched on police brutality, the KKK, racism, drug abuse, and more. But, Cop Killer, that was a protest song against police brutality, likely inspired or at least escalated due to the Rodney King incident. And it was quite a controversial song at the time. I was reading up on it yesterday, preparing for this, and, there was police pushback, police organization pushback, George Bush and Dan Quayle, pressures against the record company. The president was outspoken, and eventually, the record company stood strong, but then you guys opted to take the song off. So I think my question, though, is looking at it now 30 years later, and I was at that Starland Ballroom show a month or two ago. You played it towards the end of the set. To me, it's just a cool, energetic, hardcore punk song. But for you, how liberating is it to just be able to go play the goddamn song and not feel uncomfortable about it?
Well, we played it back in the day. We played it just because it's our song. We stood behind the song. We've never taken it off the set list. We never folded from playing the song. We got into the politics of, the record company and all that kind of stuff. But we always said, it's our fight. We wrote the song and the 5 guys wrote it in that room. It has nothing to do with Warner Brothers. It has nothing to do with all that. So we've always played the song. So every time we play the song, there's 2 things about that song. We usually play it last in the set. So I know I made it through the set alive. And then it's good to just play it because of the energy that it has. And, I met some kids, we did a show maybe 2-3 years ago, and they're backstage and they're like, they're in their 20s, they only know Ice from Law and Order. They didn't even know we existed. They said, y'all should release that song. Y'all should put that Cop Killer song out. It's really good. Like, okay, because they only know Ice from Law and Order. They don't know what we did 30 years ago.
It's funny. When I took my photo of Ice, backstage at Starland, I took it, put it on my Facebook the next day, and all my friends and family comments were like, "Oh man, that's so cool! The guy from TV, he sells insurance on daytime TV, extended warranties or whatever it is." And I'm like,
Tide, Mr. Geico Insurance,
Nah, it's funny, but that's a good story. So, it's always curious how that song is looked at now, 30 years later, but it sounds like it still has a lot of meaning for you, and it's always going to be, probably will be your signature song, whether you want it to be or not. But going into the brand new album, Merciless, listen, Ernie, I've spun this one over and over and over. Brutally heavy album music-wise, but it has a very, let's say, a vengeful feel to it, kind of vengeful revenge vibe through the songs. And then you kind of tie in the imagery, the album art, the videos, and it kind of feels like a backdrop to like a serial killer or, let's say, a slasher movie. But then again, top to bottom with the songs, it's awesome. So let's say, without getting into one particular song now, was there any influences, let's say musically or thematically, that shaped the sound of the album?
Well, Ice is a big horror film guy. We've had songs on our other records, Last Breath. We had a lot of this theme over the years. So, but on this record, we just like, you know, with age, you get to do two things. We didn't want to mellow out. You don't want to say, oh, they made a nice mellow, they're mellowing with age, So we try to keep it aggressive. We try to keep that energy up. I don't want to get pegged into, oh, they made a nice pop record. You know what I mean? We're trying to stay just as hardcore now, as we were 30 years ago. We're trying to keep that edge. We're trying to keep what's going on the streets. So that's what we tried to do on this record. Even we play with Pink Floyd. We'll get into that, but we did mellow a little bit.
Oh, that's an important song, and we'll hold off on that. But in Ernie, in the press notes, it was suggested that sort of, and quote unquote, like Ice went to you and the producer Will Putney and Vince and said, "Make me instrumental tracks so good that I don't have to sing on them. That's my agenda. Give me some grooves. It's about catching a vibe." So I guess I took that as, if that's the direction the boss is giving you, it's got to be a daunting task for you guys to make music without Ice's vision or lyrics or song titles. So take us through that process.
Well, we always do records like that. We always try to make good instrumental songs. At the beginning, he used to always sit in the room with us, and then when he first started, he's like, "Take this part, put it there." We almost work like Pro Tools works now. The band used to we know how to cut and press. And press, we know how to cut this, put it here, but the band knows how to do it as a band. Like we'll play something, he'll say loop that, and we'll say we got this over here, we'll add that in. We're pretty good at doing that now over from years of doing this. I know how to work with them like that. So that's the way we basically do our records. We make a bunch of instrumental songs, and he figures out how to go between connect the dots together. And if he does a verse that doesn't fit right, we'll play it one more time and make it fit.
So that's pretty cool. I mean, and I guess that's maybe a little less common, because a lot of times guys get in the room, they play together, or maybe they have some themes ready to go and they kind of write together. But that's a different way. But it's cool for you to clarifying that. So listen, Ernie,
one quick thing. He came from a world of hip hop where they write with drum machines. Because when we first started the band years ago, he sort of say, "Okay, go." I'm like, "No, we count," because because he used to just hitting the button and starting. So we learned, how to cut and paste like the way they write songs on a drum machine. So body count's basically like a drum machine, the way we write songs. So.
Okay. Interesting stuff. Good to understand the process behind it. But, the band's always tackled like these intense political and social issues. You cover a lot of them on this album: racial injustice, power plays, political divisions, gun control, world wars, you name it. It feels like a blueprint to what was the world 2023, 2024, and so on. So in a general sense, though, were there any themes or messages that were most important you guys were trying to get across on the Merciless album?
No, I don't think nothing's more important than any other issue. They're all pretty important. We hit on them. If they're important enough to get on this record, they're important. So nothing outweighs something else. So, but it's just the whole system is kind of messed up. So there's nothing more important. Nothing.
Okay. So we're going to take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to hear all about the specific songs on the album. But we invite you to visit metalmayhemroc.com and join our community by subscribing to the newsletter for updates on new podcast episodes, exclusive YouTube interviews, and reminders for our live radio show on Monday night. And if you enjoy the show, hit like and leave us a review, as it really helps us out. We'll be right back. So I'm with Ernie C, and we're here discussing the brand new Merciless album from Body Count. So, Ernie, I want to go back to the top of the album, the title track. I mean, this one, I don't even know what to say about it. It depicts everything about the song. And then you look at the album cover and the video. I mean, Jesus Christ, Ice is carving somebody up with all these tools. It feels like it's out of the movie Hostile. But then the classic line in this song is, "I got no more fucks to give." I mean, how fucking great is that? So comment on the imagery of the song and how it kind of ties back to the message.
Well, a lot of that is Will Putney. He comes with some ideas, and he's like our extra guitar player, so he writes a lot of stuff. And I'm like, oh, that's pretty good. I always say, as long as I can play it, you know what I mean. If he's gonna write it, or if I'm gonna write it, as long as I can play it, I don't, because I see some guitar players that play stuff and like, well, that's way out. But the imagery, that's Ice's, vision of, his horror vision that he has. He like I said earlier, he watches a lot of horror movies. So that's basically it's Grindhouse. It's just a horror movie, musically.
Okay. And you know what? Also in the press notes, it mentions that the main riff of that song is really the main riff of Iron Man, just kind of manipulated. So how did you do that?
Well, that's it's just you're just stretching the strings. It's really simple. But it's kind of a tie-in because I produced a Sabbath record, so it kind of works out that we sound like Sabbath. Why do we sound like Sabbath? Because I produced Sabbath. I hung out with Tony Iommi. Actually, a funny story. I produced a Sabbath record back in the '90s, and one night Tony came in. He said, "Ernie, I got something for you to check out." He brought the guitar that he played on Iron Man for me to play, me being left-handed and all. And he left it there in the studio all night long. And you know how many ways you can play Iron Man posing in front of a mirror at night? So I played Iron Man all night on the guitar that he used to play Iron Man on.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, we're going to get to the Forbidden album later, but that's a great story. I appreciate you sharing that. So the next two tracks on the album, The Purge and Psychopath, these both have guest appearances. The Purge, it's with George Corpse Grinder Fisher from Cannibal Corpse. Mm-hmm. I mean, this one, it's a fast thrash metal song, and I remember that song played in Jersey. The pit was going nuts for that one. And then you have Psychopath, which has Joe Bad from Fit for an Autopsy. And this one I described as sort of a crippling, vicious, powerful song. And his segment is just so badass. But so when you bring these,
it really is.
Yeah. So tell me about, when you bring these guests in, how does that all work? What's the logistics behind it?
I mean, over the last few records, we've had guests. We've never had guests in the early days. So over the last few records, we have guests because we have friends that want to be on our record. We don't go out and say, we don't write a song and say, let's go get so-and-so. They're usually around and say, can I be on a record? Because we had Randy Blythe on one of our records, on our last record. Randy's a friend of mine. I said, it'd be kind of cool to get Randy on a record. George, we know George, Cannibal Corpse, we toured with them in the 90s. So, it's just cool. These are Dave Mustaine. We've had Dave on a record. I've known him since '88, so it's cool to have people that you know and are your friends to be on your record. We don't go out and find people. They find us.
It's really, really interesting to hear that. That's cool. That should be a testament to the legacy of Body Count. Because I think of skipping down to the bottom of the album, Drug Wars. I love that song because, it's just a great song. But Max Cavalera from Sepultura, he really he takes most of the lead vocal for, probably 3/4 of the song. He's there. And then the back end of the song is more Ice coming in with his rap part. But, something like that is, it just showcases that, the guest can really play a prominent role on the song.
Right. Because, when you let down egos and things like that, it's easy to have other people on your record. If your ego is too big, you worry about stuff like that. We don't have that kind of get down. So, Max has been our friend forever. We played with Sepultura back in the 90s. So Max has been around. My guitar tech, when he's not working, he works for Max. So We're all family, we're all family.
Yeah. Exactly. And the other song that has a guest is Howard Jones is on Live Forever. But the song, Fuck What You Heard, like this is where the album kind of changes course a little bit, right? It's heavy and groovy. And the song addresses political differences. And the cool words that Ice makes up are the Democrips and the Blood Publicans. Yet it's not really about political divisions. It's more about the messages about encouraging independent thinking. So maybe, give me your take on this song.
Well, I figured it goes back to our streets. It goes back to South Central LA where we started off. The South Central LA is like a cosmocosm of the world. Everything that goes on in South Central goes on in the world. There are gang fights. There's truces that go on. Somebody breaks the truce, and it's just the way the world works. So that song just kind of reflects that, and it puts it more on a street level kind of terms to it.
I like how in one of the lyrics it says, "Body count fans are not Democrats or Republicans. We walk the line down the middle together."
Exactly. That's a good one. I like that one also. Yeah. Down the middle. Yeah. Because sometimes you might sway to this side, you might sway to this side. There's no correct path. You can only walk the middle.
Exactly. I think most Americans that have good judgment or reason walk somewhere down the line in the middle. Maybe you sway a little bit towards one side or the other, but not too far to the extremes.
No, the extremes got us in this situation now. The extremes got not just us, the world got into this situation because people are just so far apart and no one's down the middle.
Exactly, but we need that disparity in a sense because you need topics to write for all these body count albums, right? Or you don't have any content.
The first record that we wrote is the same record that's going on now. So 30 years later, same exact record.
Exactly. So you got a gun, I got a gun. You shoot, I shoot back. I love that line. Kill or be killed. This is do or die. The gunshots add color, but Ernie, is this song really more? It's not about killing. It's more about not killing, but surviving. Correct?
It's more about standoff. You know what I mean? It goes back to the world. We got bombs, you got bombs. So it's more about standoff. Just remain neutral. We don't need to pull. If someone pulls a gun on you, you pull a gun on them. It goes back to what's the Untouchables.
Yes.
The Untouchables, yes.
That's right, the Untouchables. Well, I like that one. There's a lot of good contrast on the album, and a song like one of my favorites actually closes the album, Mic Contract, to something that has this cool bass groove, and there's a bit of a bounce to the vocal delivery, and I feel like it's like a little rap, or maybe it's not a rap. I don't know what it is, but Ice kind of shines on this one, and I feel like it builds and builds and builds, and he just kind of goes off, so I couldn't really grasp the lyrical content, but what's the civic significance of this one?
My contract is an Ice-T song off of OG, so we just added guitars to it. That's all we did. Because I thought the song needed to groove a little more, so we added guitars on it. It's the same exact song that he did on OG. So, and that's where Body Count made its debut on OG. We had On With the Body Count on OG. So,
okay, gets good knowledge. You're teaching me something here, Ernie. So, the last track we want to cover, of course, is "Comfortably Numb." It's your second single, but Ernie, I don't look at this as in a traditional sense as a cover song, but it's more of a clever reinterpretation using basically only the title of the song and the music, yet it comes across with new lyrics and a fresh message here when you really read it. There's the Ice quote, "The world is fucked up, and as long as we got a roof and we got a TV, we're numb to the wars, to what's happening right in front of our eyes." If that's not the truth, I don't know what it is. But what's the message here and behind this reinterpretation?
Well, it's just the song was originally about drugs. So, we're not on doing drugs. That part of life is over. And, so it's more about a social song. But the original song, let me tell you a little bit about how we got to the point of even having Dave on the record, So the original song, we've been trying to do this song for years. I just wanted a song that I could really play guitar on, because that's a song, it's like in a key that's, you could play anything over this open canvas. So we've been working on this song for a while, and it's hard to get clearance on Pink Floyd songs, first of all, because, Dave and Roger don't get along. So it's a hard deal. So the original song that we recorded of it, I played guitar. The other guitar player was Richie Sambora. there's a version of myself and Richie Sambora playing together on it. Because my bass player, Vince, is Richie Sambora's guitar tech. So they were in a studio together with Bob Rock, real famous producer. Bob Rock recorded Richie playing guitar. And then I recorded, Vince said, Richie played on it. I was like, okay, I'll play on it. And me and Richie playing back and forth. So then we come to the point, in this business, you can do things two different ways. You can ask permission or just do it and see what happens. So in this case, since we're 30 years into doing this and we know what happens when you do things and don't ask permission. So we ask permission. Now that must be you're getting older. You ask permission to do something. So we sent this song out to David and we sent one out to Roger. So Roger, listened to it and says, who's singing on it, first of all? Because he don't want nothing to do with Dave. So we're like, oh, it's Ice-T. He says, oh, I kind of like it. It's okay. They can do it. So then we send it over to Gilmour. Gilmour's office says he absolutely loves it. He absolutely loves it. But only one thing, he wants to play guitar on it.
You're like,
so I'm just
yes.
Yes, that's it. What can even though Richie Sambora, and Richie understood too, he's like, that's his idol. That's his guitar idol. So he's like, well, I'm like, okay, my guitar part will be taken off to put on Dave's guitar part. I mean, that's a bragging right there, even to say, because my rhythm guitar is still on there. I said, I played on a song with David Gilmour, a kid from South Central Los Angeles played, with David Gilmour. So that's something right there. And I told Ice, I said, these English guitar players really like me a whole lot because I played with Tony Iommi. I've been in the studio with Brian May and Tony Iommi. So I'm like, these English guitar players.
That's some good stuff. Now, did David, I guess, did he just virtually he sent his track in, or was there ever any face to face?
He sent this track in, and then we were in London last summer, and he was trying to come play with us. So he said his office says at one point he wants to come play this with you because he's never going to play it again with Pink Floyd. But he said he would like to play it. So we're hoping, if the stars line out right, I'm just throwing this out in the universe, that some kind of way we get a nomination for a Grammy or something like that, and we get to play at the Grammys with David Gilmour. That would be the ultimate. I could just die right there on the stage after I finish playing the last note.
Well, let's hope that doesn't happen, but I get the analogy. Well, you guys...
Yeah, you get it.
Well, listen, you guys missed each other only by about a month because you guys were in New Jersey and New York for Jimmy Kimmel beginning of December. Gilmour played 5 nights at the Garden the beginning of November, and he was on Kimmel.
He was on Fallon. But,
okay.
Yeah, right. I get those Jimmys mixed up also, so don't worry about it.
Okay.
So what happened was, and then when we were he came in the dressing room with us and told us stories about Gilmour. He was geeking out. He was a fan, and his band, some of the Roots, the guitar player Kurt, he came over to me and said, David Gilmour was here, and he's like the nicest guy, and this and that. I was like, wow, I haven't met him, but from what I get from him, he's a great, individual. So I just find that interesting.
See that? You see, you got a little learnings from Fallon. Yeah, Kimmel, Fallon. I know they're all the same to me. I'm with you.
Yeah.
What is it like?
It's a Jimmy.
It's a Jimmy. There you go. It's a Jimmy. So what is it like when you go? I've never been to one of those, but what's it like when you're preparing to play one song on a live TV show? Is it rehearsal, setup, and then do you actually get a chance to go talk to the host and just shoot the shit for a half hour?
No, it's real short. He comes in, he says hi to everyone, you do the show, but it's nerve-wracking doing one song because you don't have time to warm up. It's like getting ready to run a sprint, without stretching your legs or anything like that. So, and then the first time we ran it through, my foot switch didn't work right, and I was like, it didn't go to the right distortion at the right time, and so they're like, we're going to do it again. I'm like, okay, because you can't stop, and it's nerve wracking. You just go through it, that fast. But I think at that when we recorded that song, that's the best television performance we ever did. I mean, we've done a bunch of them from Conan to Arsenio Hall back in the day. That was the best television performance we did. After, the second run through, because we did it, they took the second run through. I was able to play the notes, and I reached the notes. I'm just a guitar player. If I'm a half a semitone off, I kind of, nobody knows it, but I'm like, I'm off.
That's how it is. It is live, but so that's some cool stuff, Ernie. Appreciate it. So what's touring look like? Because again, I know you played overseas in Europe, I think in the autumn. Maybe just ask you really quick, what was your impression of the Starland record release show? Because that was a good one. You had Murphy's Law and the Cro-Mags. I had a great time. I was not on your side of the stage. I was on the other side of the stage, but right up on the barrier. But it was a sick show. I'm not going to lie. It was pretty killer.
The Cro-Mags, we were supposed to play with them during pandemic. We had a show. Actually, the singer from the band had the show T-shirts that we were supposed to play during the pandemic. Because last time when we did a record, we were going to do Jimmy Fallon. What's her name from? Ann Lee from. Because we had the song on the last record with Ann Lee from Evanescence. She was going to be on the show with us, and it got canceled like the day before. That we had another show and a tour, and just a mess. We're just getting back. This record is just us getting back to playing, because we've done 2 records. It seems like we did a double record. Considering we did Carnivore, and then we did these records back to back. So it's like this summer we're going to play about 5 shows this year. We're going to play a big festival down in Florida. We're going to play one of Kevin Lyman's Warp tours. We're going to play one of those. It's going to be. He's only doing like 7 of them. They're huge. They're going to turn into like Lollapaloozas. It's not going to be like the old Warp tour where it turns around. I think the age is going to be a little older also now. So because everyone's older, so it's going to be a big festival. So we're playing one of those shows, some other shows, maybe do another television show. But next year, next summer, we'll tour again in Europe and things like that.
Okay. Well, I'm always curious from an artist that, has been doing it for a long time. What's it like for you, like where, you play a place like Starland that's, I don't know, 700 people or so, you could do a longer show. You go to Rockville, you might be in front of 40,000 people. It could be 4 p.m. and 100 degrees, but you're only getting an hour. What's it like? What's the difference like?
It's basically the same. I like the clubs better because you get to see people and you get to touch them. You get to throw picks, and I can make them, flip picks and things like that. But it has its ups and downs. Festivals are cool because you get to reach more people. You go to festivals in Europe, you play for 150, 175,000 people at a time. And we played one in France called Hellfest. That's the name of it. Right. We played at like 11 o'clock at night in front of 200,000 people. And it's bizarre stuff. The music, the way different contrasts are, the way things are, just so night and day.
Yeah, that's the big festival scene in Europe. I've been to a few myself, but I'm sure for a band, it's got to be pretty cool. But you're right, Hellfest, I think, is, maybe between Hellfest and Graspop in Belgium, those are the 2 biggest rock and metal festivals there are.
We played Graspop last year, and it is bizarre, and then we played one, I forgot the name of it. We only played like 2 years ago, and we've never even heard of it. It was like a huge metal festival. There's so many cool festivals over there, and then you get I get to be a fan. I saw who did I see play for the first time? The Scorpions. I sat up right up under the Scorpions and saw them play for the first time. I saw what's the name of the band? No, I can't. I see the band. No. Anyway, I can't think of the name of the band.
Well, that's what it's like there. Those festivals go 12, 15 hours a day, and you can see a million bands. But that's just the setting and the way it is. So, Ernie, this has been great. And listen, I wish you best of luck with the album promotion. Merciless is out now. But I want to dip back into your history now and talk a little bit about the Black Sabbath era. I was a huge Tony Martin era Black Sabbath fan. Being the age I was, I didn't discover Sabbath till around 1987, which I was 17. And that was when The Eternal Idol came out. So my first time seeing Sabbath was on the Headless Cross tour. And of course, I followed them since up through those years. But when Forbidden came out, I was pleasantly surprised that you and Ice were brought in. You were brought in to produce it, mix it. And I probably attest that to the rising popularity of Body Count. You guys are an in band. But maybe to the general public, did it cause a stir where people like, well, who the hell are these guys? How could they promote a Sabbath album?
Okay, first of all, people always say, to me, I say, oh, that's the worst Sabbath album ever. I'm like, how many Sabbath albums have you done? So that's my first thing I say to people. And I've caught criticism with that over the years, even from Tony himself. But the thing about it is the remixes that are out, the album that came out, it's done very, very well. And people are liking the record more now than they did then. But the original, there was a guy named Miles Copeland, who Stuart Copeland's brother. Miles ran IRS Record. Miles liked me a whole lot. He's the one that wanted me to produce the record. I had no idea. So he calls up and says, I want you to produce Black Sabbath. I'm like, okay. I said it like that. Yeah. It was that kind of thing. So he flew me over there. I met Tony, and they didn't seem like they were real receptive of the idea, because I met Cozy Powell, who's like, I'm stepping into big shoes, so I walk into Cozy Powell, and we rehearsing his castle in England, right? And Cozy has like 4 complete drum sets set up, 4 complete drum sets. I'm just a guy with 1 drum set playing, right? He has them all set up. He says, what I'm going to do, Ern, he calls me Ern, I'm going to play on each drum set for about a half an hour. After you take all your notes and everything, when I'm finished with this 2 hours of playing, I'm going to, we can go through everything and see what drums you want to use from which particular set. I'm like, what the hell is he talking about?
Wow. That's some pretty good stuff.
He plays the drum sets, and I'm like, first of all, I'm going, okay, this is way out really good, So he plays everything. So I said, I like the 3rd drum set. I like the snare from this one. I like the bass drum from that one. I like these 2 cymbals over there. He says, oh, you do? I said, yeah. He said, I kind of like that too. I'm like, okay, great. Just act like you know.
Oh, man. That sounds like a tensely fun situation.
Yeah. Because he would sit there with a stopwatch, and he would go, I'm off right there. I'm like, okay, we need to do it again. But very intense. So then I get his drums, I had his drums, because my whole thing, I was going to dry them up and make them sound more like Nirvana. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Dry, not necessarily, because, they had that big, wet, big room sound. And so I worked, we worked a day getting the drums. And so then he listens to him, he comes in and goes, that's really good. I like the way that sounds. That's really good. Okay. He says, Ernie, you get really good on these drums, but you know what? He handed me a tape. He handed me a tape. He says, this is my drum sound. Tomorrow, have my drums sound like this. So I said to the engineer, turn up the reverb. We're back to normal. Let's go.
Wow, look at that. Cozy taking over. He was in control. So what were the Tonys like? You alluded at the top of the hour. You got to play the guitar that Tony used on Iron Man. How about Tony Martin? Because I think of a song that opened the album, Illusion of Power. That opened the album, and then you have the Ice-T rap part in the middle, which I think is cool. But, what were their feelings on that suggestion in the beginning? Were they up for it?
Oh, they were up for it. I had Tony use a whammy pedal for the first time he ever had one. And then I had an artist come in and draw some stuff of the Queen in a bird's cage. They were like, oh no, we can't do that. they were scared of making mockery of the Queen. They were going for that kind of stuff. But Tony was the greatest guy, and I was like, Tony, why don't you produce this record? He's like, oh, because I don't want to hear all this stuff that you're getting right now. So I'm like, oh, I get it. And so then I'm in the studio. I get a cease and desist letter from Sharon, and so somebody delivers it to me, like, Ernest Cunningham, you need to cease and desist recording this record because we own the Black Sabbath name. I get all kind of stuff. And so I said to Tony, I said, what is this? He says, oh, they do that to everybody. She's just trying to scare you. I said, well, she's doing a damn good job of it.
It's like you got hazed coming into the Sabbath camp. There was like your turn to get hazed.
He's like, yeah. I'm like, do I need to send it to my lawyer? He says, nah, don't worry about it. She'll leave you alone. I'm like, okay. But then later on in life, I met her. Because we played Ozfest, like in 88, in 18. We played Ozfest. And I said to her, I'm, blah, blah, blah. And I told her, she says, oh, baby, that's just business. she gave me a hug. That's just business, baby,
Well, and I was going to say, Ozzy announced his farewell concert over in England in July. You guys weren't on the list. I think you need to call Tom Morello and invite yourself.
Yeah, that could be a thing, actually. We need to be on it, but we'll see how it goes,
Yeah, that's good. Well, I'll tell you, looking back at the album, I think Forbidden's a good album. It was a great tour. They had Motorhead out. I mean, one of my favorite Black Sabbath songs of all time on all the albums is the song that closes the album, Kiss of Death. That song is epic. Epic track.
I don't remember Kiss of Death, but I remember Cozy playing all kinds. It's a good drum sounding record. The drum sounded really good on that record. I know that much.
Well, it sounds like if you ever get a chance to see Tony again, you could have a pint with him and have a laugh. You mentioned you also were, in the studio or with Brian May. When did that go down? What was that all about?
Well, what happens is I'm sitting in the studio, recording, Tony's guitar parts, and inbox Brian May and Jeff Beck together. So wow. They're hanging out. They come there. And so I'm like turning around going, what the hell is Brian May and Jeff Beck together? And so Tony says to me, he says, Ernie, what do you think of that guitar part? And I'm thinking to myself, why don't you ask Jeff Beck and Brian May what they think of it? So I said, Tony, can you do it one more time for me? Because I didn't hear a word. After they walked in, I didn't hear nothing for a long minute. It was like, like my life just walked into the room. So they were really nice. And, they both were nice to me. Jeff Beck gave me a guitar pick. Because he don't play with a guitar pick. That's really what's good about it. He plays with his fingers. He gave me a guitar pick. He says, "Oh, here's a pick for you." I'm like, "You don't play with a pick?" He said, "Yeah."
Well, you got a pick, man. It came full circle for you, Ernie. From you as a kid in the '70s picking up the guitar. Well, and that was 20 something years later or whatever. But you're in with rock royalty. Amazing stories. You must be like, if you ever write a biography like that, there's part of it right there.
Yeah, I thought that was the greatest thing. I always consider that the greatest moment, to be in the studio with those three guys, doing guitar. And we did at a studio in Liverpool that the Beatles recorded at called Parr Street Studios. It's before Abbey Road. They started recording in Liverpool itself at Parr Street Studios.
Wow. Okay, this is some good knowledge that we can't find on Wikipedia, guys. So
I only know it because I lived it. Because I had no idea when I went there.
Wow, that's some great stuff. So Ernie, is there anything else going on you want to promote for 2025? What's going on with you personally? Anything you want to share with the fans?
No, just that I'm coming up on 15 years being sober, and that's it. And so everything's cool.
Well, congratulations on that. That's a big accomplishment in and of itself. But I wish you the best of luck. What are the socials? Where can we find all about this Body Count album? Anything on Ernie C? What are your socials?
Bodycount.com. That's the band. And I'm Ernie4321 at Yahoo or wherever it is, on Instagram, everywhere. I'm just Ernie4321. I've had that so long that, it stuck with me.
Okay, well, we'll make sure we have all those credentials up there. So, again, I wish you the best of luck, and I hope to see you again down the line. For my guest today, Ernie C of Body Count, I'm Metal Walt, and this is Metal Mayhem ROC.
Metal for life.
Thank you for listening to Metal Mayhem ROC. Check out our website at metalmayhemroc.com for information on podcasts, archives, links to all our live radio shows, and all sorts of info. Please like, follow, and share with everyone, even your non-metal friends. And always remember to keep it heavy.